Hello, I'm Tom Rogers and this is the Rebel Education Podcast. Hi everybody and welcome to the Rebel Education Podcast. I am joined today by Calvin Robinson. Calvin, you are on air in about 3 seconds, so you can hopefully say hello to everybody. Calvin, hello, I can hear you. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully well. I'll just tell everybody what's happening here, and then we can continue hopefully with a conversation, which I'm really looking forward to having. So thanks so much for giving up some time to come on.
Not at all. Thanks for having me, mate.
So in case you don't know or anybody else doesn't know, this is the Rebel Education radio show. Essentially, I'm going to do one of these, hoping to do one of these, Sunday to Thursday every week, including guests, just to really talk about the hot topics in education, the things that are going on, the things that people are talking about. And really, I want to engage teachers in a conversation about the things that are really going on in schools and classrooms. And today, I know we're going to touch on a lot of things today, but one of the things that I'm hoping we're going to discuss is conservatism in the staff room and perhaps political bias in education, because I know that's something you've written about, Calvin. But before we get on to that, do you want to just introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about your story up to this point? Calvin's gone. Don't know where Calvin is, but he was there. I'm sure he'll come back. Calvin's nipped off. I think we mentioned. Oh, he's appeared again. I think we mentioned conservatism in the classroom, and I think Calvin ran away. Calvin, I'm hoping you can still hear me, but I can't hear you. So I love a good technical glitch. Let me just see if I can ask again if anybody wants to join. Now you're coming back. We'll see if Calvin can rejoin us. Hello, Calvin, are you there? Hello, I can hear you. It's okay. I mentioned conservatism in the classroom and you ran off.
Yeah, yes, for good reason.
It's the moment I mentioned it, everything went quiet.
What can I say? It's a nightmare. The introduction. My name is Calvin Robinson. I'm a secondary school teacher in an inner city London school. Until recently, I was an assistant principal at an all-through school in Barnet, and now I'm helping out at the West London Free School.
Excellent. And I've heard a lot of good things about the West London Free School, the work of Louis Everett, the work of Michael Fordham in the history area. I know that I think you recently started there. Is that right?
Yeah, I joined there in January. We've got Robert Peel, we've got, as you say, Louis Everett. We've got a really strong team, Robert Orme, amazing teams over there, really good teacher cohort.
That's right. So the first question I want to ask you, because we're going to crack on with this, and by the way, for listeners, if you want to ask Calvin a question, you can literally click into the Periscope link, which is on my Twitter at the moment, and you can literally just request to join, and you can join the conversation with us. You can ask a question live, and then we can hopefully broaden out the conversation. But the first thing I want to ask, Calvin, I'm sure you don't mind me asking this, is what you're a big supporter of Boris Johnson. What's wrong with you?
He's a very good man. I'm a big supporter of Boris Johnson. He supported me in my campaign a couple of years ago as well. I think he is a quintessential Tory. And in this candidate's race, we've got a few Tories that aren't actually that conservative. This guy actually believes in our values. He actually is a conservative. That's why I'm supporting him.
Okay. How would you differentiate between Boris and, say, Jeremy Hunt or Michael Gove? What's the difference between them for the layman like myself?
Well, I think Jeremy Hunt is more of a continuation prime minister, isn't he, or candidate? He's more of a Mayist, and May was all about big state, intervening in people's private lives, setting rules and regulations, banning things, and that's not what conservatism is about. Conservatism is about protecting people's civil liberties, their freedoms, to be responsible for their own lives. And the state should be small. We shouldn't have a nanny state that interferes in every aspect of your life. It should take a step back. And one of the bigger things for me is money as well, the taxes. And Rory Stewart on BBC the other night talking about we need to not cut taxes. In fact, he might need more government spending was ridiculous. I mean, the Conservatives should be enabling people to keep more of the money they earn. That's one of our core beliefs, and that's what Boris believes.
Okay, we've actually got a caller. Let's see what they have to say. I think his name is Mark, but we'll find out if Mark has a question or wants to pass comment on this. But that's I find that a really interesting answer because I do understand what you're saying in terms of real conservatism. Mark, is it Mark? Hi, Mark. Do you want to ask a question or pass a comment on what Calvin was saying?
What is the theme for speaking?
Sorry?
What is the theme for speaking today?
What is the term? I can't hear you, Mark. I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm not sure if Mark's gone, but yeah, thanks, Mark.
Live TV.
But yeah, just coming back to what you were saying, Calvin, is that I struggle with Boris, and I'll be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
Pre-2016, I quite enjoyed the whole, flying in with a parachute, with the little British flags and kind of the quaint kind of cycling around and running around in jogger pants and stuff like that. And, the kind of bumbling, guy. I enjoyed all that. But then when it came to Brexit, I think that's when, for a lot of people, that really soured things a bit. I can only obviously talk for myself with Boris. I mean, do you understand that point of view that people might have on that one?
Sure. But I mean, you mentioned his eccentricity and his patriotism, which again are very British things that we don't see a lot of these days. But yes, he is a Brexiteer, and that's another reason why he should be our next Prime Minister. Whether you are a Remainer or a Leaver, surely people see by this point that we have to leave now. We pledged that we would follow through with the referendum, whichever way it fell. It happened to fall on Leave. Therefore, we have to do that. Otherwise, we're undermining our democracy. And he's one of the few people that said, yes, look, by the 31st of October, deal or no deal, we're going to get out of the EU.
I promise, by the way, listeners, that we're going to move away from Boris and the Conservative leadership election very soon. But coming back to kind of, talk about your support for Boris and everything else, but being a Conservative in education, I mean, I've read some brilliant articles by yourself in different publications about your experiences. I've written actually for the TES about kind of how conservatives might have been treated in the staff room at different points, different anecdotes, different stories. And what would you say? I mean, what would you say has been your experience of being an open Conservative working in schools?
I think, in all honesty, it's still very toxic. Not where I'm now. Where I'm now is lovely. But in general, as I go to other schools and as I talk to people about it, it's still not considered okay to be centre-right in your thinking. And we talk a lot about diversity, but we don't actually mean diversity, do we? We mean diverse as long as you agree with what we all agree with the majority. And if you don't, you kind of cast aside. It's not pleasant.
Yeah. Can you give any examples? I mean, obviously, I understand you might not want to talk about that on here, but can you give any? I mean, even if it doesn't involve you, I mean, can you give any examples of what you've seen or experienced?
Yeah, I've written and talked a lot about my experiences, and I'm quite open about it. But just in the staff room during the general elections in 2015, before all the multiple elections that we've had, one of the teachers said to me, who you voting for? And I genuinely thought it was a rhetorical question, because everyone else around the room says Labour, 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 Labour. So I was like, yeah, I'm voting Tory because I'm a Conservative. And that was literally jaws dropping, and people were upset by the fact that I would choose to vote for someone who they weren't voting for, which to me is a shock. It's like, come on, this is a democracy. We all have our own opinions, surely. We can't all share the same ones. That would be very boring if we did. But just the vitriol that I received as a result of that, and people coming up to me to rant and rave at me for every single Conservative policy that they disagreed with. And to say that I hate children and that I don't like the NHS and that I'm trying to kill people on disability allowances, all these horrible, nasty things, nasty remarks that are completely untrue.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to in the classroom in a minute, but I mean, do you think that bias extends into classrooms and from the staff room into classrooms? And if so, how do you think it extends?
I think there's a lot of subliminal bias in the classroom. A lot of teachers were talking around Brexit about it being a very scary time for people and being very worried about the results, and even after the results, being very upset by them. And this isn't the kind of message we should be passing on to our young people. If you want to talk about Brexit in front of young people, offer both sides of the argument, sure, or just don't address it. But don't tell kids how scared you are for the future of the country because people have voted different way to what you were going to vote. That is horrible.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, interestingly though, has your view changed on Brexit since 2016?
Not at all, no. And I love that as well, because a lot of people didn't know what they were voting for. Everyone's changed their minds. Like, no, not at all. I knew exactly what I was voting for, and I would vote Leave again. I voted for freedom. I voted for sovereignty,
Okay. And, the only reason I asked that is because, I mean, Brexit for me, unfortunately, has, in my opinion, divided our country. It's divided the United Kingdom. I mean, obviously, I live in Slovenia at the moment, but even in Slovenia, amongst the expats, it's divided anybody from the UK, whether they live in the UK or not, or wherever they are. Do you think that the referendum was necessary? Do you think it had to happen?
That is a very good point. I think it has been very divisive. And I'm not necessarily sure it's because of Brexit itself. I think it's because we've forgotten the art of debate. And that's the most worrying thing of all. Everything has become so binary. It's either you're good or you're evil, or you're right or you're wrong. There's no middle ground anymore. And people can't see each other's perspectives. So when I say I'm a Leave supporter, people don't want to hear why. They don't want to rationalize. All they want to know is that I'm a bad guy because I voted differently to how they did. And if we can just get back to actually debating policy and talking through other people's points of view, then maybe we'll be all right. But I don't think it's because of the referendum. Whether we should have had a referendum or not is a different argument altogether. I think that was Cameron trying to save his party rather than anything to do with the nation. But, we had one, so we have to respect it, I think.
Okay. And keeping on this theme of kind of conservatism in schools and in the staff room, I mean, for you, what are the key things that you've? I mean, obviously we've got a Conservative government at the moment, but what are the things that interest? What I'm interested in is what you would change about education policy from the Conservative from this situation we're at now. What would you actually have changed since the Conservative government has been in office to create a better environment for teachers and teaching professionals?
Okay, so I don't think I would change that much. I think Michael Gove was probably one of the best education secretaries we've had in a long time. I'm not his biggest fan at the moment at all, but I do think he did a lot of great good for education. And I think now's the time we need to leave education policy alone for a while, let the dust settle, let's see all of his policies come to fruition. We're starting to see the results come through now, and we're seeing a lot of positive results. And Ofsted is starting to lean in a more positive direction as well. I know you're not their biggest fan, but they're changing their direction for the good, I think. And I think Amanda is great at what she's doing. We've seen, some good stuff coming out of today's event.
So I'm just going to, Calvin, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to call you up a little bit here on Michael Gove. Why do you believe that he was a good education secretary? I mean, my argument would be that since 2010
Yeah.
and before, actually. I mean, it's not as if it's just that. But what I will say is teacher recruitment and retention has escalated as a crisis since 2010. We certainly are nowhere near reversing it. We're not meeting the training targets for teachers. Surely
Right.
Michael Gove, as the instigator of a lot of his policies, has to take some responsibility for that.
I think he did a lot of good. I think he introduced a more rigorous, knowledge-rich curriculum. I think he brought traditional values back into education with a new renewed focus on classics and that kind of stuff. I think the whole free schools and academies movement has been great. The emphasis on studying a foreign language up to the age of 16. And for me personally, he reintroduced computer science to replace ICT, which is a real subject, real rigorous subject, computer science, very knowledge-based, and ICT was a bit fluffy.
No, I mean, just to clear that up, because I had a very rigorous debate, Calvin, on Saturday. You probably couldn't have missed it. It was like a nuclear bomb dropping off on my Twitter account. But essentially, in that debate, I made clear that, yeah, I do think that Ofsted should be accountable for some of the problems. I think the UK government should be responsible for some of the problems, and I believe that school leaders should be accountable for some of the problems. Yeah. But I do believe that the narrative at the moment, and the narrative that I've seen coming out of the government and Ofsted, has been to shift a lot of the blame, if not all of the blame, for the current situation onto school leaders. And I simply, that's the bit where I struggle with.
Well, I mean, look at what's happening now. We're seeing these statements of intent, aren't we? And this is exactly what Ofsted have warned against. Don't sit there with your meetings of SLT and draw up an intent statement. It's all about actually getting your curriculum in order. And people are thinking, oh, how can I tick the new boxes for the new Ofsted framework? And they're getting it completely wrong again.
Yeah, but I mean, from my perspective, I would call those unintended consequences in inverted commas. Because at the end of the day, you cannot get that consistency. You know, regardless of how many messages Ofsted send out or what they do, I just believe that there are too many unintended, as they would call, unintended consequences of grading schools, and that would be my kind of argument, that it feeds in. I'm not saying that it means that they are, telling school leaders to do what they're doing, but they are facilitating an environment where I believe the school leaders, especially maybe more inexperienced ones, the ones that are under more pressure, are making more rash decisions. That's my view anyway.
Yeah, perhaps.
Moving on. Yeah, go on.
If we do get rid of Ofsted, what would replace it with? Because schools need to be held to account as well, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, Calvin, I have written a article tomorrow for the TES about that very topic. I am a proponent of a peer-led system, and I know that I've been challenged on that one to say, well, we might not have. I think Ben Newmark's challenged me on it in terms of we are in a different context to some of the countries who have a peer-led system, countries like Finland, Canada, and so on and so on and so on. But I just feel we need to trust teachers more and trust leaders more, because I feel as though we've got some brilliant teachers and leaders in the UK. Why can't we have a system like Finland and Canada have got? That would be my, what is preventing us from having that?
Yeah, perhaps. We do have some really good teachers, and we do need to trust them more. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So I mean, let's move the conversation on, because I read a really interesting blog from you, again, quite recently, on British values in the curriculum. And my first question to you really is, what are British values to you?
Well, I mean, the government have outlined what they should be: democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, a mutual respect and tolerance for those with different faiths and beliefs. And I think they're pretty good ones to stand by. I don't think anyone would actually disagree with those values in and of themselves.
No.
But
I mean, what do you think has been the, why do you think it's proved controversial? Why is this issue coming up again and again about the implementation of British values in a curriculum or a school? Why is it coming up again and again? Why do people have a problem with this?
this modern, like, seemingly progressive attitude of self-denigration and anti-patriotism. People, it's cool to hate on your country right now, and people hate the word British being in British values. And all the backlash I hear at SLT meetings and governor meetings is, well, why do they have to be called British values? It's like, well, just first of all, get over that, and let's concentrate on the actual values. But people can't. They can't get over that hurdle. And I don't know what it is about them being British values that upsets people so much. But I mean, I hear things like, but they're not just British values. Lots of countries share these values. And actually, lots of countries don't share these values. But yes, they do. A lot also do. And we should highlight the values as something that we think everyone around the world, everyone should agree with democracy. Everyone should agree with respecting people of different faiths. These are things we should shine as a nation and say, look, this is how we think it should be done. We can't preach to countries that don't respect human rights unless we have these things in place ourselves.
And how do you think that schools can promote British values? I mean, when you imagine a school that has British values at the heart of its curriculum or the heart of what it does, what do you see or what do you envisage?
So I think it really has to be at the core of the ethos. I worked in mostly CAB schools, and they always have like Christian values built in and around the ethos of the school. I think that works really well. I've only seen one school really doing British values particularly well, and that was Michaela. The way that Catherine Birbalsingh has built it into the school itself, down to every aspect of what they do, whether that's in assembly time and Catherine's reminding them, stood at the front as head teacher, saying, you know what, we're all from different corners of the world, we all have different religions, but one thing that unites us all as the Michaela community is our British values, that we are all proud to be British. And I think that's beautiful. It's really unifying. I think it's a good thing. And just as you go around the school, I think Barry Smith does something that's similar at Great Yarmouth Charter, where kids, yes, it's silent corridors, but they might just start suddenly quoting a poem or a prayer or something together. They might start saying the words to Jerusalem. And that, to me, is also British values. That cultural heritage, that cultural literacy, it's part of what they do. But yes, you can also build it into the curriculum. We've got PSHE, we've got citizenship and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned Michaela and Catherine Birbalsingh. Well, what is it about Michaela, a school like Michaela, that you admire? What is it that makes you feel that way about it? What are the things that you admire there?
I mean, they've taken so many influences from so many great schools, King Solomon, Dixon's Trinity, but things like the family meals. Everyone sits around a table. There's one adult at the table. All the kids are serving the dinner. They have a topic of conversation to discuss. It's teaching kids table manners. It's teaching them all kinds of normal, in inverted commas, things that we used to do that we take for granted these days. I mean, a lot of these kids will go home and they'll eat their dinner on a tray in front of EastEnders, and they won't get that same value that you get. And I think just building on that and just all of these, I mean, Catherine herself said, British values should be a sense of duty, a sense of obligation and belief in one.
So that was a really fascinating discussion. Thanks. I'm sorry we couldn't go on for longer because we're up to 50 minutes of wonderful conversation. But what a fantastic debate and what a fantastic show. I just, again, want to thank Calvin for coming on because he's given up a lot of time there to talk to us. Mike, Eileen, thanks so much for calling in. We'll be back on, I think, on Sunday night. And excitingly enough, on Tuesday night, we've got Sam Strickland coming on the show. That's going to be an amazing discussion about behaviour in schools. He's a head teacher over in Nottingham. He's going to be talking about his story in his school, but also we're going to be talking about wider school improvement strategies, what to do first, how long it takes, etc. So if you're a school leader or if you're somebody involved in policy making, then I think Tuesday night is going to be one to definitely pencil in. So as I say, the plan is that I'll be back on Sunday night with another episode of the Rebel Education Radio Show. You can download every episode of the Rebel Education Radio Show as a podcast. About an hour after each show, this will be a version of this will be put onto Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and YouTube. So if you want to listen back to anything we've said today and take part in wider discussion around it, then you can do. And please do tweet it out, join the conversation around anything that we discussed in the show today. Thanks to the guests, and I will see you next time.